Thanks for joining this parallel track on interoperability within and between data spaces. I'm George Lobo. I'm working in the Interoperability and Digital Government Unit at DigiGit in the Commission. And I will let my co-moderator introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Coen Janssen. I'm a policy officer at the Data Policy and Innovation Unit under DG Connect. Good day, everyone.
So we will have now 6 panelists to join us on stage. So we will, we'll call them. I mean the slide. So I will ask Federico Milani to join us on stage. And you can take place here. Sorry. So. Next is Dimitrios Gatsofolias. Sorry. So please join us. Michal Bikovsky. Over to you, Coen.
Oh.
Sorry.
Alberto Albella. Welcome. Mr. Stefan Hoppe. And last but not least, Leire. I will try to pronounce it properly.
Maybe if you can communicate a bit.
I think I will be on this side. So
Okay.
Thanks.
So we will also be using Slido during these sessions because there will be some interaction with the public. So please join. Either you scan the QR code with your phone, you enter the code, and you have to join the Silver Hall room. So in order, if you want to participate via Slido to this session, we will not be taking questions from the audience, but if you ask, any questions, you can ask them via Slido. If in times allow, we will take some questions.
Okay. Yeah, because I can't see the slide otherwise, so I will stand up again. We will be using this slide as the overarching anchor for the session today. And all the panelists here can position themselves actually in one of the elements here shown on the slide. And what the slide represents is the vision of a European single market for data. This came from the European data strategy that was published back in 2020. Which brings me to our first panelist. Federico Milani, as Deputy Head of Unit of the Data Policy and Innovation Unit. You have been one of the thought leaders behind this whole vision of a European single market for data. So could you give a brief overview of the inception of the strategy and what has happened since then?
Yes. The mic, please. The mic.
Fine, thanks. So, good afternoon to everybody. Well, as Coen was saying, we are the responsible for the European data strategy that was adopted in 2020. And the basic idea of the European data strategy is exactly to find ways to promote the sharing of the data for promoting businesses, developing new tools and services, and also for policy making. So the initiative that we highlighted there in the data strategy are of several type of initiatives. There is the legal framework that we put in place. There is also initiative for funding and developing data spaces. If we start from the legislative initiatives that we promoted, well, there are mainly 3, let's put it in this way. So there is first the Data Governance Act that was that entered into place in the 23rd of September. The 23rd of September last year, where we are trying to promote the sharing of data by creating a trusted environment. So in there, what we are trying to promote is a new actor in the data sharing, which is the data intermediary that has got specific characteristics. So the fact that, for example, he cannot use the data that is promoting to be shared for its own benefits and other specific requirements that it assure its neutrality in promoting and fostering the sharing the data between data providers and data users. We've got also the creation of the new figures of the data altruist organization that are collecting data from organizations or citizens that want to share the data for a specific objective. I don't know, citizen that wants to share their health data for a specific researching a specific treatment, but also people that want to share their mobility data to improve the mobility of the public transport services in the town where they're living. So there are plenty of ways of sharing the data, and with the data altruist organization, we are creating again an organization that we can trust, that it's using the data only for the specific purpose that we've given them the data. Then, as I was saying, we started also to further develop the concept of common European data spaces. The concept was already there, but we have started to promote it and also to support the creation of common European data spaces in several data spaces that you find there through the creation of stakeholders networks, and now we are moving further in the deployment of the first part of the data spaces. Now the data spaces, as you perfectly know, they've got two aspects. They've got the technical aspects, so the creation of a technical infrastructure, and there later probably will talk much more about the support for the creation of this technical infrastructure. And then there is also the governance infrastructure that needs to be in place so that, again, organizations are sure that when they are transferring, where they are sharing the data, which doesn't mean only transfer the data and doesn't mean only offering the data to the data user for free, they will have the possibility of controlling that data through mechanisms like contract agreements or other type of things where, for example, the data does not move from their servers, but they accept running of algorithms from the data users to in their servers. So there are several things that we are trying to support in several sectors, as you can see. With the DGA, we also supported the creation. We have also created a European Data Innovation Board that is dealing with the implementation of the DGA and the Data Act, and also supporting the creation of guidelines for data spaces. We're supporting the Data Spaces Support Center that, again, it's a coordination support action that is helping us in promoting the concept and trying to organize the stakeholders that would like to embark in the specific idea of creating a data space and sharing data. And this one is basically coming out from the Data Governance Act, which is supporting, as I was saying, the trusted sharing of data. But we didn't stop there. We had also the Open Data Directive, and in the Open Data Directive, which is in asking the public sector administration to provide data in an open format for free. We also identify a number of high-value data sets that the public sector information has to provide to the public, to everybody, for free in a machine-readable format. And the time that they had in order to provide this data has basically ended in the 5th of May. So by the 5th of May, they should have already put in place all the infrastructure to make available this data. Otherwise, then the Commission will go to them and try to push them in all way possible to provide this data. And then there is the Data Act that is going to enter into force next year in September, where we are tackling also the issue of giving the possibility to the users and the owner of smart devices to get access to their data and to basically use, make them possible to share the data with third parties for providing new services or for having different type of services that one of the manufacturer of the smart devices is giving. In addition, we've got the possibility of improving the switching of cloud services in the same data act. And we've got also a chapter that is dedicated to business to government data sharing, where we give the possibility to a public administration in case of emergency to ask businesses for their data so that they can quickly respond to emergency such as natural disasters or other type of emergency where the access of business data can improve the response. So we've done all these things in just 3.5 years, so we've quite worked a lot. We are coming from where there was just the idea of having a European single market, and now gradually we are moving towards the creation of the European single market. But there again, we need the support of everybody and the involvement of everybody, of all the organizations that are producing data and the organizations that are using data. And with that, I stop because I take too long.
No worries. Yeah, we have also a question for you, the audience. If the production team could bring it up with the Slido. No, sorry, there's a Slido in between. Yeah. So, zooming in on the common European data spaces. So, which of the criteria that we mention here apply? What makes a data space a common European data space? And what makes a data sharing platform a data space? Could I have your votes, please? Yeah, the QR code is there. And you have to join the Silver Hall. So there we go. Federico, you can watch live the evolution of the votes and see if the audience got it right or we got it wrong. It could also. So I think it's settling down a bit. So Federico, any reaction that you see?
It's coming back to what we were listening also in the other section where I was following. So one of the major issue is privacy preserving and secure sharing of data. So again, there the trust of having the data shared by only the organization that I want to share with and for specific purpose is extremely important. The data governance mechanism as well, I think, follows more or less the same idea. So again, that one is one of the points that we always stress and where we always try to identify possible solution because, yes, we know that it's the major concern of everybody that wants to share data.
Okay, thank you. Well, then let's click on the next slide. So, yeah, my nice effect to make this ball bounce to mobility is gone, but there it is again, because it took quite some time. So over to our next panelist. So Dimitrios, as a policy officer at GG Move, you're closely involved in the development of the common European mobility data space. Now, mobility is a very wide and complex domain. It covers logistics, passenger mobility, various or different modes of transport, local and international transport. So in all this complexity, what is the approach that you're taking in the development of the common European mobility data space?
Indeed, thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this panel. Mobility and transport indeed includes all these different aspects, modes. It has this cross-border characteristics. And although for many years now in DG Move and in general in the European Commission, we have developed legislation to tackle specific modes like aviation, rail, road transport, also some relevant to multimodality. But the big question was that there was still a kind of different approaches when it comes to standard, when it comes to data sharing. There are also some security concerns, so many stakeholders are reluctant to share data. What could we do in order to help and tackle, let's say, this fragmentation? And the concept of data spaces indeed came up the last years, and indeed starting with the European data strategy and following with the sustainable and smart mobility strategy, we proposed the creation of a common European mobility data space to look both in mobility and transport. When we say mobility, we mean passenger mobility, and transport, with transport, we mean mainly the freight transport. Working together on an, let's say, umbrella initiative like the EMDS, like the Common European Mobility Data Space, can help to look at both these aspects, to unlock use cases relevant to multimodality, to look also of how we can combine mobility and transport data with other sectors, like energy, when it comes to electromobility, for example. In other use cases, like the use of the creation of low emission zones or urban vehicle access regulation zones, so that travelers from other countries, when they are approaching a city or a region, they would be aware if they are allowed to enter with their vehicle, or if they are carrying people with reduced mobility, to be able to get an ad hoc exception for that. These are the reasons we are working on that. We have launched actions, preparatory and deployment actions with that focus. One of them was completed last September, was the Prep the Space for Mobility action, where we looked at quite a number of ecosystems. I think we have a slide or question about it, so I will not say the number now. And the consortium defined some first building blocks relevant to the EMDS. Following that, last November, we launched a deployment action under the Digital Europe program, and with the aim to look at urban mobility and traffic use cases. There are 9 cities/regions currently involved in this project, where they are defining actually what are the problems that they want to solve, what are the use cases. And we have cities like Sofia, Lisbon, Barcelona, Milan, Stockholm, but also regions like Flanders involved there, the Ile-de-France, and it will last for 3 years, so we still have a little bit of time ahead, but it will give us already the first instances of the EMDS. In parallel, we launched a study to look at the overall governance aspects of the mobility data space. As you understand, it includes all these different aspects of both mobility and transport with different stakeholders, so we need to see how we can cover all input from all relevant stakeholders. And we will look also to create an interlinking layer, one of the components of the EMDS, that will help the interlink of all these different data ecosystems. Just this month, we concluded also a proof of concept with the help of the Digital Unit of Interoperability on how we manage personal data in the framework of the EMDS. And we will have actually a seminar, also a webinar on that on Monday with George's team. There are still other actions relevant to that. There is another call under the Digital Europe program that was just closed in May, and we're now in evaluation phase that will look in multi-country projects and cross-border use cases to create a long-lasting infrastructure. And another initiative that is relevant, if you are familiar with the edX, I think also yesterday it was mentioned, probably one of the alt edX that was already created. There is also one on mobility and logistics data currently in the works, with quite a number of member states participating, and we hope that we will have during the year the application from those sides. Currently is Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Finland in the lead, together with France as observers and other member states. So I think that's an overview of the actions, and when we complete also the EMDS, the study, at the end of the year, we aim to continue with the deployment action of the interlinking layer that I mentioned as component. The think we have also a question.
Yeah, let's move to the Slido. Thank you. Could we bring up the second question, please, for the audience? So how many mobility? Yeah, you can also take it.
Yes, I just wanted to, yeah, we were discussing about what kind of quiz we could add, how many mobility and transport, data initiatives, ecosystems, and platforms. I think it's missing from here, but I think it's platforms, yes, are currently in Europe. And it was part of the first preparatory action that indeed the consortium had to look across Europe. We added on purpose Europe because it was not limited only in the EU. There are other countries, neighboring countries, not EU member states, but there, as you mentioned also before, Coen, the mobility and transport ecosystem has this cross-border nature on its own. Let me know when we should give away the result.
Yeah, I think it's settling on the
between 200 and
you see who the winner is. Well, there's a close tie between two options. So you can you tell us the?
Yes, indeed. So the correct answer is above 400. Indeed, the consortium looked at more than 400 data ecosystems, but of course there was a process to choose and from those to filter some based on their maturity or the relevance, geographic balance as well. So at the end of the day, the analysis focused on around 230, I think, but initially they discovered more than 400 ecosystems.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now let's move to another important aspect of the data space, and it's public administration. So, Michal, you are enterprise architect at the Ministry of Digital Affairs in Poland. You are closely involved in national and European development related to data and interoperability. You are also very familiar because you have been in the discussion for the Interoperable Europe Act. So your work is focusing currently on access to base registry, public sector open data, and interoperability framework. What can data space learn from this development?
Thank you. Good day, everyone. So right now I work from within the public administration, but in the past I was an entrepreneur and I'm also a citizen. So from all these perspectives, I think that there could be a good summary from the Queen song related to data. I want it all, I want it now. So regardless of the data, if they come from the open data areas or the public registries and data spaces, they could be useful in our everyday lives, in the life events, in the business events, and of course, the administration is hungry with data because they have to make interoperable services. So today we are talking about the data spaces, the concept which is deeply rooted in the EU Data Strategy and Data Act, but of course it is closely intertwined, as George mentioned, with the Interoperable Europe Act. And today we are talking about the solutions for the interoperability, and as a matter of fact, the Interoperable Europe Act defines interoperability solution, and it defines it as a solution which could come and relate to the legal, organizational, semantic, and technical layers. So usually when we develop digital services, we think about digital solutions like IT systems, IT components, APIs, web services, etc. But interoperability solutions could be much more and could be, for example, enterprise architectures or reference architectures or data standards, etc. So I think that I will tell you about the Polish experiences related to the basic registries data and open data, which could be insightful for the development of data spaces, looking through the lenses of the key interoperability enablers. First, interoperability enabler is common terminology. The second one is are standardized and stable interfaces to digital services. And the third one is knowledge about the digital services landscape. In the case of the last one, sometimes it is only perceived as is the present landscape. But if you would like to develop digital services or data space, you have to look also into the future. you have to take into account what projects are running right now and will provide the products, outcomes, or update to products, for example, to standards, and what is the agreed common future for the solutions in Digital Europe. So in Poland, several years ago, we started with the enterprise architecture approach to the government transformation. It is a systemic strategic approach for the digital transformation which uses models, principles, and recommendations. And quickly after starting in 2014, we started to align our approach with the European Interoperability Reference Architecture, because we wanted to have a common terminology used in our solutions, in our documentation, and also used from the EU perspective. I also mentioned that the enterprise architecture is a way of transformation of digital state, and it is based on models. So the simplification of reality, which contains building blocks. Today on the conference, we are talking about the building blocks. We are using in our approach the architecture building blocks, which define business and functional requirements for the solutions, and actual building blocks called solution building blocks, which materialize and realize these requirements. So in Poland, we, for many aspects of the digital government, use the architecture vision, architecture repository, which contains thousands of models representing architecture building blocks and solution building blocks. So it satisfies the knowledge and also the common terminology requirement for the interoperability enablers. So therefore, it is useful in Poland, and it relates also to data, because our architecture aligned with the IRA is also addressing the models of data and data sets. I would recommend considering the preparation of the reference architecture for data spaces. Right now there are 14, maybe, if I'm correct, 14 data spaces or so, and there will be much more in the future. They share some common characteristics and should have a similar core. Of course, they are different, but this core, from our perspective, should be based on the reference architecture, which would define architecture building blocks related, for example, data acquisition, data management and governance, data visualization, APIs, etc., and supported with the catalog of solution building blocks, which are the correct solutions applications with source code, which satisfy these architecture building blocks. What is important to stress is that there is no one-to-one connection. There could be many solutions which satisfy requirements for the building blocks, so the people working on data spaces design and development could choose which are the most suitable for their requirements. And also this reference architecture to support interoperability, European interoperability, should be, from our point of view, based on ERA. And as a matter of fact, ERA has a data space component object, so it already started. Another thing which I mentioned when I was referring on key interoperability enablers are standardized and stable interfaces. Poland is proud to be in the top position of the data openness in Europe, on the third or second position. It is partly on the standard for API for the open data, which was de facto running in Poland for the past several years. So in Poland, because we want to have a universal access to the different pools of data, we are considering reusing this standard for access also to data to the public registries. And therefore, we will have a standard, and if we are talking about the stability of APIs, of services, we also have to define the service level and then monitor the service level. Therefore, my recommendation would be, in relation to the data spaces, having a catalog of metadata related to the different spaces, data spaces, in one place, and also information and documentation of the APIs, standardized APIs, which could be accessed, and also maybe the monitoring of the stability of this service level, stability of these APIs, because if you are doing your own solution, you have to take into account the weakest link. So you have to understand what is the service level. And last thing I would add in relation to our experiences, in Poland there is an open data portal and interoperability portal, which has been running for many years, and because the interoperability is based on the competences to cooperate, we are providing multimedia trainings on open data and interoperability and architecture, so it would be also nice to have one place to find information and education on the data spaces. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Michal. So now let's ask the question. So if we can have Slido, please, on the screen again. So this is how, this is the question, and I will ask you to comment on the answers given by the audience. So you avert, and I've seen this morning that almost everybody has read the Interoperable Europe Act. There was a lot of green cards, so you know by heart. So how do you think the Interoperable Europe Act can support the implementation of data spaces? And I will ask you when things stabilize to comment on the answers.
One thing for sure, no one is voting for the last one.
Yeah, this was
by requiring all data exchanges to be revived by a central EU authority, it would be total disaster for the access to data. And looking up, we've got a nice picture by establishing common standards and frameworks. First and foremost, Interoperable Europe Act gives the mandate to establish and develop further European interoperability framework, which addresses the semantic interoperability. Many information contained within the framework, and as well as principles and recommendations, refer to the data exchange and data standards. So it's an obvious response. And of course, if we talk about the security and compliant data sharing, you could think about for example, data sandboxes, which provide secure and compliant data sharing within the innovation context. Of course, this act is promoting cross-border cooperation because of the cross-border interoperability concept and trans-European services. So I think that in this room, everybody read the act. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move, we can go back to the slide. So now let's move to another important aspect. Thank you, Michal. And I turn in now to the part that was mentioned also by Federico, the Data Space Support Center. So, you, Alberto, you are the data modeling expert at the Fiverr Foundation. You're working on pragmatic approach around semantics for shared data. So, the question is how can we encourage parties to convey the meaning, within the semantics of shared data, and to reduce friction in the data market?
Thank you very much. And I like very much the previous question, because supposedly the solution is to create common standards will be the solution for data spaces. And now let me make a couple of questions to the audience. How many of you have used ChatGPT or equivalent bot? How many of you have? Okay. Do you remember first time when it was launched? It was 20 months ago. Okay, 20 months. So the world has changed in these 20 months. Do you know what is the average time for creating a standard like in ISO? What is the average time? Around exceeding 24 months. So if we are, I don't want to criticize ISO, okay, but 24 months compared with 20 months, in these 20 months, the world has changed. So now AI is kind of I don't want to mean something is from everybody is using it. And we are waiting for the standard to be launched, okay? So that's the point. So maybe now the next question. Do you think that we can use the same approach for creating standards that we are creating in the past? And what are we doing? What do you think that is going to happen? Or what do you think that is happening right now? It's happening that we are creating standards with an adoption which is rather poor. And there will be many reasons. I don't want to say that the reason is just because you cannot adapt to the market speed. Possibly, I think that this is one of the reasons. Possibly there will be others. And now my goal is to tell you, what will happen in these data spaces when you have information that has no standard? We will make a survey by the end. So what will happen to this information which is going to a data space to be shared and has no standard? There is no definition of what is in this data set. Do you think that is going to be interchanged? I hardly think so. So then I guess that we can do things slightly differently. So I don't want to give just an introduction, but there is an agile standardization, is that instead of, let's say, trust on the consensus of a group of experts, and I don't want to mean wasting, but using 34 months for creating a standard, maybe we can do something which is complementary, which is if there is a pioneer who is documenting the way of coding some type of data and share it with an open license, maybe we can all together follow and extend this initial pioneer. Why I'm saying that? I've been collaborating in Spain in the standardization of data for municipalities and so on. In Spain, there are around, now is 80,000 data sets. There are around, I'm estimating, 3,000 to 4,000 different types. In 6 years, we were able to standardize 80 out of 3,000. So we will never reach, because the types of data keep on growing. So basically what I'm stating is that if we don't do something differently and complementary, I don't think that we can extract all the power, all the social impact of the data. And all these data spaces could struggle to reach the potential because we are lacking and we are something. But remember, this is one cause, but could be not the only one. There are some other things. What I'm managing is the Smart Data Models Initiative, and we trust on existing standards. So when there is a standard, we adopt it, and we don't create brand new. And let me just summarize, because I don't want to extend very much, and maybe there will be room for questions, that the important point of the standards is not the creation, it's the adoption. And if we think on adoption, what we have to do is to reduce the barriers. And what I'm going to say possibly is not very popular, but out here, maybe many of you are very, very proficient with RDF and other semantic coding. But if you go to the real market outside, not that much people. Okay, so I don't want to mean, I'm not against RDF. RDF is perfect. But this semantic approach can be translated in other ways for reducing the barrier of adoption. And I don't think that we are paying much attention. Of course, there can be other barriers, like the language. Could be other barriers, like having examples of code. All these things we are doing at the Smart Data Models, we are identifying barriers to some extent, trying to lower them. And let's say, we are doing kind of a reasonable job because we have many people contributing to the initiative, but the point is that we have to think on the user, on the adoption of the standards, because otherwise we will pay much attention, we will launch many standards, but something will remain unsolved, so people is not adopting. And if you have created your own solution because there were no standard, it's hard that you way back and change the way that you are presenting the data for other things, because it costs money and it's difficult to justify. So basically, if we don't do the things differently, and agile standardization, I guess, is one of the solutions, we could struggle to make successful the data spaces.
Okay, thank you, Alberto. Yeah. Ah, yeah, the Slido question.
There is a question.
Yeah, first, yeah, sorry. So can we have the question that did this one?
You want to read it out? Or?
Ah, yeah. So what percentage, you have to read it here, what percentage of data currently being shared for reuse as proper semantics? There is a clear tendency.
I sampled. Okay. I made 300 samples. Manual.
So I guess you can already comment because there is a clear tendency. There is no need.
I guess that I've conditioned you. You didn't know that. You didn't know that. Yeah, but you're right. You're right. 90 is below 25%. So basically, this is what is meant for reuse. I don't want to mean that this is the information that is coming to the data spaces. It's very soon to say that. But I've made that sample in the 70,000 data sets in Spain. We have a statistical sound sample, and the result is 23-24%. So yes, and 70%, I remember this percentage, has no semantic information at all. So okay. Good luck.
Thank you, Alberto. Coen?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the slide.
Yeah. So here we are moving to another domain, and I have to explain how we are talking about data space, but also about domains. And here, the next speaker, it is about an industry-driven approach to data sharing. So let me introduce Stefan. You are President and CEO of the OPC Foundation. Your organization is active in industrial automation domain, working on cutting-edge technologies and interoperability. So the question, could you tell us more about the role of data interoperability in industrial automation? What are the challenges in combining the various data sources, including from devices, machines, sensors? And what is the potential, the value, when it all comes together?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. You brought so many questions which are in my brain, which I try to answer also in my small pitch. But first of all, what happened in the industrial automation space? 1995, I don't know, 6, 8 people, I was not part of that, I'm not that old, came together and just thought about, let's do interoperability. And they talked about protocol interoperability. Let's design a protocol which fits, can handle everything, and if everybody's implementing that, then we are happy. It was the idea of taking the printer driver, having the operating system, and there are different printers, and so the SCADA system, the visualization system, can talk to all devices, assets in a field, in a factory. That happened for a while, it has been adopted, and then they figured out, oh, we forgot security, and by the way, semantic would be great. So, and now the real success stories start. So there was a history, like USB #1, right, which was good idea, but poor. And today we have really fantastic user experience with USB-C. So the OPC UA, the technology, started then in 2003, standardizing, and it took only 3 years to make 23 parts as a standard because I had a fantastic layered architecture. I'm still super impressed. I was not part of that group. I just had the honor to implement the world's first device in 2007, bring it to the market. But I tell you, since that day, 2006, where it was released, till today, 2024, the last 18 years, we had 5 updates with integrating more and more functionalities, but we never lost backward compatibility. So what is OPC-UA? It's a meta-modeling language, and once you have described your thing or your service, the rest, what you need, is already integrated. It's part of the framework, which is transport, how to exchange data, and which is built-in security by design. Who is allowed to see, access, what kind of data. And by the way, transport in the industrial automation space is really, it's not easy because you have different layers in the automation world, and they have so different approaches that not one single protocol is fulfilling all the needs. I hear a lot here on the conference, we have REST interfaces and that's fine, and maybe file transfer. I tell you, in the industrial automation space, it's much, much different because the requirements are so different. You need to exchange data in small microsecond timings, but we also, so it's the transport can be done TCP, UDP, MQTT, REST, file transfer, yes, because transport at the end doesn't matter. The real key of digitalization is to agree on the semantic and on the behavior of that devices. And so that's what we deliver, and what we partner with is the real domain experts who are writing, really defining the semantic. So bringing the 20 robot companies into a room in a peaceful way, that they understand each other and have a final decision on the semantic. And this is where I believe this is the longest part of standardization. It's not write the standard itself, from my experience, just the last 30 years. The longest part is how to get a critical mass of open-minded people into a room. I always recommend to have good dinner and red wine and become friends, because once you have increased the trust to each other, even if it's a competitor, you see, oh, they have the same challenges than me, right? So that takes a year sometimes to bring people together. Then you have a technical part doing the standards. Then you do prototyping. Do not release the spec. First do prototyping, because you definitely will change the spec. And then release the spec and then try to adapt it. And that's what we do. And so last statement here, second last statement, we are the OPC Foundation. We started super small with 6 US-based companies and 1 European and 1 Asia company. Today, we are over 1,000 companies. It is a who is who of the complete industrial automation world, the Siemens, the ABB, the Rockwell, the Mitsubishis around the world, everybody. But, and that makes me really proud, also the IT companies, which I never expected before. So Alibaba, IBM, Google, Microsoft, AWS, SAP are all members. And because they see this is the USB connected to all the information, right? And so to give you a final idea on adoption, 30 years ago, if you want to connect your machine to SAP, you had to implement a protocol, you had to define data. So you have to hire somebody, and it took minimum 1.5 weeks, maybe longer. Today, you can connect with that standard to SAP with less than 5 minutes, including international reviewed security standards. But in parallel, you are also compatible to all the other IT companies, and you are no longer locked into a specific ecosystem. Right? So that's a little bit to the success as a story. But other than that, I feel so much familiar with you reported on challenges. So this morning when Markus from Germany was on stage and he mentioned, well, there is not the one Germany. I'm also from Germany. So there are 16 states, right? So who's Germany? And that's what you have also with big enterprises. You have one person or one department in a big enterprise company, and he is supporting something. It doesn't mean that the Siemens and the one Microsoft is behind something. It's always a challenge to find these open-minded people and move something forward. They always get internally high stress. Why do we do this, right? Nobody takes care of this standard. And once it becomes successful, then they are the heroes. But hopefully, in the meantime, they survive, right? And that's, I believe, same also in the public sector. That's very similar. Okay.
Thank you. Let's bring up the next slide to get some impressions from the audience. So when we're talking about challenges, if you talk about digital twins and data spaces, so what are the major challenges for introduction of digital twins and data spaces in industrial automation? Audience, please.
there's still a race, but oh yeah, thank you. Fine, thanks. Well, unawareness of data sharing business model is definitely true. At least I'm talking about the industrial automation space, right? Not on other spaces, because I believe there's the world really different. In the industrial automation world, you have these so-called Mittelstand, small, medium-owned companies, and they have a specific functionality in their machines, what they are aware of. But they are not the security experts, they are not the data experts, and so on. So they are not aware of that. We need a lot of education there. Yeah, and the people from the machines who share data, they don't know what is my benefit for this, right? The IT people obviously love to get all that data. Yeah. My personal favorite, by the way, would have been the ignorance of existing and adapted standards, just to be clear here.
Okay, thank you. Let's, yeah.
Thank
Over
you,
to George.
Stefan. So now let's move to we come back to the same figure as well, but now we move to the technical infrastructure part. So Leire, you're a policy officer in DG Connect in the software and cloud and software unit. You are closely involved in the Simple project. We have also been involved a bit together before, but so can you tell us what will be the role of Simple to enhance interoperability within and across data space, and how will Simple ensure data sovereignty?
So thank you, George. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be talking about Simple, which is as challenging as pronouncing my name, as you can see from the slide. But anyway, so Simple is a procurement. It's a project that it actually started on the 1st of January this year, and it's aiming at creating a middleware, so an intermediary, let's say, an intermediate layer that will connect infrastructures, data, and services. So the challenges that Alberto mentioned with respect to interoperability, those are real, because without data, Simple will not survive, will not be successful. So we need to solve the issue of interoperability. In this respect, so Simple has several layers, let's say. One layer is interoperability, that's at the core, as I say, not only at data level, but also at infrastructure and also applications. Of course, we have the security aspect or the control of the data. So every data that is being shared should be controlled, should be secured, and the owner of the data should retain the control of this data. And finally, we should facilitate also new business models and new services. Simple comes in 3 flavors. There's one flavor that is this, what we call the Simple Open. So Simple Open is the open source solution. That is the generic solution that we are currently working on. It's going to be open source. We are currently defining the requirements. We invite you all to participate in this exercise. The requirements are released on the Futurium website of the Commission. The source will be open source. We just released yesterday the proof of concept in a live demo. I think it was one of the few live demos that we had, at least in our session. So yeah, I think that's a success story. It was a sprint of two sprints of 3 weeks. So in 6 weeks, we were already able to deliver something. I think that could be considered some kind of success story. We will have the minimum viable product by the end of the year, where you will be able to see and download the components and play around with them. With respect to interoperability, yeah, as I say, we are focusing on interoperability at infrastructure level, so resources, cloud resources, for instance, edge resources. At data level, and here we are talking about semantic and syntactic, and to achieve that, we'll be incorporating different vocabularies, different ontologies that are common, let's say, in certain industries, of course. Here's where the limit comes, because there are not many ontologies and vocabularies available. So we have some, for instance, coming from TCAT AP, from Digit, for instance. We have other vocabularies, but there aren't many out there. So we have a challenge there. And also, as mentioned before, we do not have the data in the right format. The companies that want to set the data spaces, the first question they ask is which data I have or I could share, and in which format I have it. And in most cases, it would be PDF. So we will need, as simple, we will need to provide the tools in order to transform this data into something that is interoperable. So, yeah, those are big challenges that we are facing in Simple. It's a 3-year-long project for the time being. It's challenging, and we are welcome. We welcome any kind of feedback and help and support and ideas, of course, new ideas, because we don't know everything. So, from you.
Thank you, Leire. So now let's move to the Slido question. Prepare. So, what are the top 3 features Simple should develop in support of data space interoperability? So I read you. I will not read everything. I will let you read. I think you can vote. Come on.
Everything.
Just for the audience, we are following an agile approach, so we still need to prioritize.
Yeah. I think we're coming back to this security.
Yeah.
aspect.
Which is related to what happened with the answer from Federico. Yeah.
So I guess it's stabilizing. I mean, what can you comment on?
Yeah, so security, there are many layers of security in Simple. For instance, for the part on authorization and authentication, we are, for the time being, only using a username, password, and a PKI, so public key, public-private key. But we will also be incorporating EIDAS and other security mechanisms like cryptography, for instance. For the authentication, let's say, of the documents, so that cannot be tampered, one of the goals that we, or one of the solutions that we're going to use is verifiable credentials, which is becoming a standard nowadays in the industry. There's also W3 standard on that, so that will allow us also to work on that. For privacy, we will be using also anonymization tools, pseudo-anonymization tools, so that people, when uploading their data sets through Simple, can be sure that no private information is actually being served.
Can you tell also about the other answers, even
I don't see them.
Because even if they didn't win, maybe you could point some of the things that
my glasses, so.
Okay.
Okay, catalog management. So one of the key aspects of a data space is actually to be able to have a catalog of data, catalog of services, catalog of infrastructure. And here what we are trying to do, of course, it's not only the uploading of resources or adding a resource, but also being able to manage the whole life cycle of the resources. And when uploading, for instance, a data set or metadata, be able to define which, so how you want to publish, give the usage policies, who should access, how should be accessed, under which conditions, terms, for how long, etc., etc. And those are aspects that will be considered in the catalog. The second one.
Able to define and maintain vocabularies.
Yeah, this is also very, very important. And here, so we are now defining some built-in vocabularies, but of course, these additional vocabularies, so Simple should be extendable, so that anyone could add their own vocabulary. And this is one of the challenges that we have currently in Simple. That if any of you know any sectorial vocabularies that you believe that we could add into our system, that would be perfect, because that would enhance the adoption of Simple also very much.
And the next one, but it was what you, I guess you're working on the onboarding part?
Yeah, the onboarding is, it was demonstrated yesterday. It's the onboarding of a participant, but also the onboarding of the resources. And here, for instance, we shall be using the verified your credentials, for instance, for the, to ensure that the documents cannot be tampered. We are having here cryptography, public and private keys, etc., etc. Of course, the final the decision of whether a participant can be onboarded or not will come from an organism that we've called the Governance Authority, and that also comes from one of the initiatives that Federico is working on, which is the Data Space Support Center, in which they also defined a similar role to the Governance Authority, which define the policies and procedures and rules in order to participate into a data space.
Okay. Thank you. Leire, Coen, now we're finished the first one.
Okay, let's bring up the next slide. So this was the first round of questions, and we would now like to continue, and I think there were some very interesting insights from different angles and perspectives. Now we would like to continue with the general question to all the panelists, and we will take, whoever wants to go first can go first. So based on your experience, and also what you have heard from the other panelists today, what do you see as the biggest challenge to make this European single market for data come to life, to really legally or in regulations exist, there are programs going, but what does it take to really make it work and that you see activity there, transactions happening? Who wants to take this first one?
Okay.
Okay, I have some candidates. So first thing is the simple question, who pays the bills? So what's the business model around data spaces? So is the one who joins, is the one who sells, are part of it? So this is something that we have to discover in some of them, because now they are strongly supported by the Commission, but in the future they have to live by themselves and they have to find out. This is one. There is another point, which is the traceability of the transactions and all the economic interchange. So I guess that from the technical point of view, we are ready, but I guess that there are many things that can be improved. So this is another challenge. And the last point is awareness. So I've been participating in many data spaces projects, and everybody is willing to participate to see others' data, but not to share their own. So they're, what are they doing in energy? I want to see what are the others, but not their own. So I guess that we need that awareness, and that awareness will come when they really can trust, if I put my data there, no, it's not precise. If I make available my data there, because initially you don't have to move the data, it will be sure. There won't be any failure. My competitor is not going to take something that I'm not saying to be taken, and this kind of thing. With these three things, I get that we can do much. And we peel the onion. I call it the onion effect. You peel one layer of the onion, and then you discover next three.
Okay.
If I may comment on this or continue, I would support that there is importance of the value proposition for the companies to participate in open spaces, in data spaces. So maybe some encouragement from Commission, especially for smaller companies, how they could develop their business model for sharing or providing the access to their data, so they will be encouraged too. The second thing is, I think that there is a risk of having some data spaces which are totally closed, so they are only for some companies who exchange the data and between them and see that as a win-win situation for them, but for the not benefit of for the market or for the citizens or for administrations. And the last one, when public administrations would share data in data spaces, they are at least legally obliged for the quality of data and accountable, legally accountable. On the other hand, when we talk about the enterprises, there is a question, what would be the proof of quality of data? If they provide the data which are the full set of data or only subset which is comfortable for them, or will affect, for example, the policy making in Europe. So I see those three risks. Thanks.
Who wants to talk?
Who wants to go next?
Federico or Federico?
Okay. So I was thinking of an example, and I was looking before when you were having lunch, and there were a lot of people exchanging information, exchanging language tokens by talking to another person. And there it happens only when you build a level of trust in that other person. And the exchange of information that you do, it depends on the level of trust that you have on the other person. So, and that one takes humanities to get this feeling of trust, takes humanities several thousand of years. Now, in 20 years that we are exchanging data, we want to do exactly the same thing, and it's not easy. So trust is the major issues that we have to overcome when sharing data in data spaces, which is also what was mentioned before. We have to find ways to develop this sense of trust in the person that is receiving the data. And that one is one of the major difficulties that we've got and we are confronted with, which is exactly what was said before. I want to participate to the data spaces, but I want just to see what are the other people sharing, because I might be interested if they start to share interesting information. So I do not want to be excluded, but I do not want to move forward because I do not trust. That one is one of the major points. Then the other thing that, of course, you do when you are exchanging information, when you are talking, is to have a common language. So interoperability, which is, again, another thing that is extremely important. Again, there, in the language exchange, we didn't solve it completely after several thousands of years, because if we do not speak English, or if I start to speak Italian with Michael and Michael is responding me in Polish, we will not be able to exchange information. We will exchange language tokens, but we will not exchange information. So again, there is a lot of work in order to make sure that the semantics is right in order to exchange information, because even when we are speaking English, sometimes the semantics is not exactly the same thing, and I'm saying something and I'm convinced that the receiver is understanding what I'm saying, but most probably he's not, or many times he is not, and he is not understanding. So interoperability, but then first trust, it comes first, in my opinion, on exchanging data as overall, and especially on data spaces.
Thank you, Federico.
Yeah. For the mobility data space, the challenges that we mainly see is how the different stakeholders, they really sometimes are reluctant indeed to sit on the table to discuss about how we can work on these interoperability aspects. As an example, when I present the concept of the mobility data space to the rail industry, and I'm telling them that we need to look for a governance structure, they think, but we already have one for the rail, so we don't need another one, or just use this one. They don't consider there is aviation, they don't consider that urban mobility needs a completely different approach. So for me, this is the challenge of how to bring all these different stakeholders on the table. And then we have, of course, all the member states and the different challenges there for the exchange of the relevant data. I hope that indeed with all these actions, I see that we progress and people understand more now. And I think that there would be a need for active participation from all these different stakeholders representing the transport modes and the member states, local authorities, and so on.
Thank you, Dimitrios. I don't know if Stefan.
Yeah, just to some answers. I mentioned exactly trust, bringing people together. I always invite them to a good Italian restaurant with some wine, as mentioned before. But here you both mentioned there are so many parties, companies, just being in a monitoring mode, just want to know where is my competitor, what is he thinking, what is his direction, and also trying to get that information in the private round later on. Yeah, that's how the world is. But I figured out that even that's great, because I am acting in a way that everybody who's participating in a group, I'm doing advertisement with at the beginning. Even I know they are not committed. Even I know they are not behind. And even I know the technology is not on their roadmap. But with doing this, I'm increasing the pressure internally to them. To give an example, and now I have to be political, very careful. Because of all these companies agreeing to the standards in the industrial automation sector, the IT companies were very keen to say, oh, that's like a USB connector to all this information from that area, and we want to keep that semantic information also in cloud systems, which is a dream for me. I never thought about that. And I can quote companies who are really in front, like Microsoft with Azure is doing that. They are keeping the context of the information from the industrial world and keeping them in the Azure cloud, keeping that context, but only in the industrial automation world. So they have the technology, they could do it also in other sectors, but they are doing it just in industrial automation sector. Alibaba Cloud joined the OPC Foundation from China because they don't want to miss the race. AWS is part of that, Huawei and SAP. So now I can't tell you who I believe is not committed, obviously not, but I do advertisement with all of them. And if 2 or 3 of them are doing it, then you have the domino effect that the others have to follow, otherwise they get blamed, right? And that's exactly my job, doing marketing and stimulate end users, hey, why not push this or that company? And sometimes it's much easier than I thought. For example, at this Hanover trade show, so the trade show for industrial automation, already 2 companies showed up and said, yeah, we are supporting this. It was Microsoft, I mentioned them before, and AWS. Hey, that's a world for me. Mm-hmm. So I tell you it will take another 3-4 years, but then we have the semantic information which 150 groups defined. I'm a robot, I'm a pump, I'm an injection molding machine, I'm an RFID reader. We have that in the cloud systems. And then we can run artificial intelligence, machine learning much easier, right? So having people in the room who are just listening is not too bad. Don't underestimate that. Just do good marketing.
Yeah. I don't know if later if you want. Yeah.
So, thank you. So I would say for me, the main challenge, as I mentioned, was the availability of data. So most organizations know they have the data, but they don't know which data they can share and in which format they can share it, and which value that data has for them and for the others. So that's a retrospective exercise that most of the companies need to do. The second one would be the business value, the business models that can be generated thanks to these data spaces. So I, as the data owner, will share my data, and I might, I will be retributed from my data. That's why I'm sharing it, right? But it's not only that, because I will be benefiting from the data of the others, and I will be able to create additional services, values, whatever, or even make informed decisions on my own business processes. And the third one is and this comes very often, we do not reinvent the wheel. So my main concern is that maybe the colleagues from the mobility data space are facing the same challenges that we are facing in Simple, and we might be funding the same thing. So we should be aware of initiatives, of the others' initiatives, let's say, and try to not reinvent the wheel at European level so that we do not spend a lot of public funds on doing the same thing.
Thank you.
That's the European speech.
Thank you, Leire. Thanks, it was very, very interesting. I mean, the challenge, I guess I saw that there were some common things. I mean, there are many commonalities between the answer. And now, I mean, we will give you the floor again because, I mean, we know from discussing with you before that certain if you have call for action, what are the next call for action? Maybe, I mean, since you have the mic later, that about simple, you mentioned it a bit in your answer, but...
So as I mentioned, we are running simple, so it's an agile process. We are releasing everything as open source and open, of course, under the appropriate licenses, and we are expecting to engage the community. The community may be here. So we are looking forward to your contributions, to your comments, to your components that could enrich simple.
And maybe the URL is on.
Yeah, so this is evolving, okay? So for the time being, the requirements are on the European Commission's platform, Futurium. You could access them there, Futurium Simple. And the code is currently being released on code.europa.eu/simple.
Thanks,
for our social networks and everything.
Yeah. Later. Any call for action on your side, Stefan?
Well, you can contact me always. It's opcfoundation.org. Then you'll find me. I'm open. That's why I'm here, right? That's part of the beauty part of the job. This networking and learning about other areas, other domains, and then you know that the own knowledge is pretty much limited. So that's good. The call for action is really. I'm second this year. There are solutions already in specific domains, and why not contact them, have a look, and not redefine the wheel. That's definitely because we don't have time for that. I agree on that. Even artificial intelligence is helping us to reduce also the time for standardization, also in our area, instead of taking 2 years to write a specification for a wind turbine. It's an 80% approach within immediately, and then you have to work another year only. But AI is just helping us to reduce efforts, but it's not replacing our engineer brains. I'm an engineer, obviously. Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan.
Okay, regarding call for action, first thing, do you know that we have mapped some of the OpenCUI models?
I know.
You know.
Because your previous boss, CEO, was living in my neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Okay, that's fantastic. No, my job is to encourage people. I know that it's a bit commercial to look for smart data models because our job is to make easy to integrate these semantics into data spaces. By the way, I have to know what simple requires because we will try also to be compatible somehow with simple, whatever it takes. And to try to minimize the effort for those things. And there is another point that we haven't commented, but this, I guess, is important. There are some organizations creating data space connector as a service. Because somebody of you mentioned the small companies. Small companies possibly don't have the resources, either the knowledge for connecting, implementing everything that it requires to connect to the data space. But this can be done thanks to these mediators. So I guess that making these mediators popular could boost the participation in the data spaces. And the last call for action, maybe is for the public service, which is, we have in the European Open Data Portal 1.7 million datasets. Some of this, I don't want to mean all of them, could be interesting to be into some of the data spaces. But having in the European Data Portal is good, but you have to put into the data spaces. And I'm not seeing kind of an initiative for making this available in a, let's say, in a regular way. And I guess that is something that should be done. I don't know who or when, yes, soon. But the sooner the better.
I mean, publication office is involved in data space for sure, but this we can discuss. Michael, your call for action.
In the first response, there was insight that the organizations don't know which data they own, what is the meaning of their data or value of their data. So I would respond that the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So the value of the data is only for the data user. Of course, data owner uses the data, but if he or she or the organization is sharing the data, it could not even imagine to which aims it could be shared, it could be reused for other applications. Therefore, my dream is to have a one-stop shop portal for all European data, regardless if it's the open data, the data for the public registries, or the data from the data spaces. Of course, I'm talking about the metadata. So you could find what data are available, what is their meaning and structures and all other metadata, and what are the organizational and technical means for accessing the data. For some data, it could be very easy, like for open data. You could reuse it, the license is very open. For some, you have to conform to some requirements or be organization of specific type to access data. This is the next step. But the first step is knowledge what is the scope of data related to different domains, to different specifications, etc. So I think it would be best if every institution, company, or maybe academia also would easily find the information about the data sets available and then proceed to the pool of data, to the data lake which contain this data and conform to the regulations which are binding for this data lake.
Thank you, Michael.
From the mobility data space side, I think first of all it will be important to note that indeed all the development that we do is in collaboration with the Data Space Support Center and the blueprint there, and we have also there are assigned people indeed to work with each of the sectoral data spaces. Yeah, and at the same time, with Symbol as well, we're looking forward. I hope that starting next year we can be included in one of these labs, right? Living labs, I think. Yes. So this could be very interesting to see of how indeed we can make use of all the outcome from these two initiatives. Specifically now, call for action. If you want to get involved with the shaping of the mobility data space. Under one action, the deploy EMDS, the deployment action that I mentioned before with the 9 cities regions, the URL is deployemds.eu. There you will find first the information of the preparatory action, the prep space for mobility that I mentioned before, but there are also 2 collaboration and networking groups that are just being developed. One of them is for, if you work, for example, with local authorities or with transport operators, is for the network of follower cities, I think it's called. And this is exactly as the name says, a group for transport operators and local authorities and regional as well, to work together, exchange use case ideas, and work on help us shape the EMDS part. And the other group is the Innovation and Scaling Group, if I remember the name correctly. Any private actor and professional that would like to get involved, you can get into this group. Regarding the mobility and logistics data, EDIC, the European Digital Infrastructure Consortium that I also mentioned before, it would be great if we have more member states on board. If you're working with ministries, either in digital topics or transport topics, I will invite also my fellow panelists here, Michal, to look into that. We are welcome to have more member states being involved. Of course, also private actors are welcome, but it's mainly member state-driven, the ethics in general, in order to make the application. And these are, I think, the main call for action. And on Monday, we will have the webinar to conclude, let's say, the proof of concept that we work with DigiDigit on how we manage personal data. I don't remember the URL, but I think it's the SEMIC community website that has the information. So I guess most of the people here are familiar.
Join up, you can find everything. Federico, some call for action?
No, it's difficult, but let me be provocative. So with Simple, we are building a connector so that everybody that is going to use can build a data space and connect the various participants in the data space. And it's going to be open source. If all the data spaces adopt that connector, then we are going to have interoperability between the various data spaces. Let's hope that that will happen, but let's give them time, because as you heard, they just started the 1st of January this year. With the Data Space Support Center, we are trying to engage all the stakeholders and the people that wants to share the data, that wants to participate in the creation of data spaces, because we cannot do it alone. We cannot just pour a lot of money to the stakeholders, because the stakeholders, if they are not willing to share the data, they will not do it. A clear example here that is not mentioned is Catena X. Catena X is being funded by the German government, in connection also with RRF funding of the European Commission. But again, there is a willing from the automotive industries to share data, specific data for specific use, but there is the willingness of doing it. And there are other aspects where there is going to do this. As a Commission, we are also engaging with all the various stakeholders, for example, for the Data Act. We've organized more than 40 workshops with all the various sectors, industrial sector, in order to explain the Data Act, to see what are the issues that they have discovered in implementing the Data Act, but also to promote it. So to engage them in the discussion and to learn from them what is good and what is bad on the initiative that we are doing. Now my question is to you. Which are the actions that you want us, the Commission, to do in order to promote even further the sharing of data for increasing the competitiveness of of Europe in general and of European business company at large?
Thank you, Federico. I think we are on time, but so maybe should we have time for have a question on Slido? What do you think on question and answer? Can we have a look?
Or maybe some of
you have some of you. I mean, we can have time. I mean, maybe to the last question, because it was a question to the audience, or maybe there are. Yeah, these are the questions, but from Slido. Okay. What role will SEMIC core vocabularies and RDF play in data space? How important will it be? And if you can display them. So I would like to take these questions. The first, which has been voted the most, what role will the SEMIC core vocabularies and other RDF vocabularies play in data space interoperability? How important will it be? I don't know. No. Sorry? You? Okay. Yeah. Take this one.
The point is...
Can we have the question on the screen, slide on the screen, please? Thank you.
I'm not an expert at semi-core vocabularies, but I found so many ontologies and core vocabularies that they are very well documented, very well implemented, and nobody using it. Or that they are not covering real use cases. So what role could have? A core role, as long as it covers the real user needs. Have they checked if they really cover the user needs, or they are, let's say, a top-down effort? So I define that, I need somebody to use it. I found this all the day long. So I guess that semi-core vocabularies could be very, very, very relevant, but they have to check if the people is really adopting, or it's just a theoretical effort, well kept, technically perfect, but unconnected to reality.
I could answer yes, because I'm in the SEMIC team. But of course, I mean,
I'm not from the Commission, so this is my point of view. Yesterday and the pre-conference workshop, there were some presentations on data spaces and semantics for data spaces, And there were during these presentations, there were mentioned that DCAT application profiles are used in the data spaces for metadata, and there are specializations of these application profiles. So I see that there is a core DCAT IP, and there are specializations. DCAT IP is used for open data, could be used as a specialization for the basic registries. So I see the great potential for having a universal approach for documenting metadata and extending into the special means.
Thank you. I think, Dimi, you proposed to address the second question that...
Yes, I just wanted to mention indeed from the mobility side, at least, we are working very closely with the agencies like the European Rail Agency, that they are working on an air ontology for rail. We have also EASA and also the Maritime Safety Agency. So we have included all of those in our consultation in order to develop also the work on the interlinking layer and find exactly the common use cases that would help for interoperability. I guess in other data spaces, probably similar approaches are happening for the other agencies.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you. I think we are exactly right on time, a perfect timing. There are 5 seconds, 4, 3. So, I would like to thank our speakers for this very interesting conversation. But I think now you are all craving for coffee or for something fresh. So after the coffee break, we will all reconvene in the main hall for the closing session of the conference. Let's thank our speakers for their contribution. And see you in the main room. Thank you.